A mere 0.1% impurities make domestic sewage unfit for human consumption. Some bloom-forming algae are extremely toxic to human beings and animals as well. Those harmful microorganisms which cause diseases are called as pathogenic microorganisms. This excessive growth of water hyacinth, it will cause an imbalance in the ecosystem dynamics of the water body. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 16 of 2nd PUC, that is environmental issues. I am Dr. Divya, biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about the air and the noise pollution and various strategies that can be followed in order to control them. In today's session, let us discuss about water pollution and how to control the water pollution by sewage treatment. So to begin with, let us see water pollution and its control. So human beings have been abusing the water bodies since age old, right? Whatever wastes are there, at the end of the day, it is dumped into the water because it is an easy place for dumping of the waste. And around the world, different kinds of waste materials are dumped into the nearby water bodies. So the ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, estuaries, and even the oceans are becoming polluted in several parts of the world. Especially plastics are one of the main culprits for water pollution here, and not just plastics, even the industrial waste are also one of the main culprits for the pollution of the seas and the oceans. And realizing the importance of maintaining the cleanliness of water, the government of India has passed an act which is called as the Water Act, that is the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act in the year 1974, with the aim to protect the water resources or to safeguard the water resources. So next, let's study about an important cause for the pollution of water, that is the domestic sewage and the industrial effluents or the industrial waste. A mere 0.1% impurities make domestic sewage unfit for human consumption, right? So we have a very clean water body in the vicinity of a home, which people, hundreds to thousands of people can make use of it. But even if 0.1% of impurity gets into that particular water, then the whole water body gets contaminated and it will become unfit for human beings. And we all know that only 1% of water that is available in the planet is of good water, that is the water that we can consume. Rest all are in the form of seawater or the salt water, right? So that 1%, imagine, we have to safeguard. But in that, imagine if only 0.1% impurity is capable of completely destroying the quality of the whole lake or the pond, imagine what a lot of sewage and industrial effluents can do to the water bodies. So solids are relatively easy to remove. So these solids, sewage waste can be in the form of liquid, can be in the form of solids or semi-solids as well. So among these different types of waste, the solid waste that are let into the rivers or ponds or into the nearby water bodies, they can be easily removed. But the most difficult to remove are the salts which are dissolved, such as nitrates, phosphates and other nutrients, and toxic metal ions and organic compounds. Why? Because these would get dissolved in water. Solid waste, you can see them floating on the water. So either using a net manually itself, you can easily remove it off. That is not a problem. But what about the dissolved salts and what about the different metal ions or the agrochemicals or whatever that is mixed in the water? It is dissolved in water. Now, how can you remove it? It is very, very difficult to remove. Hence, prevention of water pollution is always a best strategy than to rather regret later. So here, as we know, water, 99.9% of the water that is there, say for example, there is a water body wherein it is 100%, it is a water body. In that, you add one small a house that is nearby that particular water body, discards its waste, whatever waste is there, discards it into that particular water body. So that waste, say for example, it has discarded only 0.1% impurity. That 0.1% impurity is sufficient to completely pollute the 99.9% of the water body. That 99.9% of water that is there, that will become unfit for human consumption. So that is why anything, one small plastic also, we think of throwing it into the water bodies, it is always better to think twice, because first of all, there is scarcity of water. So there are some other impurities. The impurities may be suspended solids such as sand, silt, clay and all that. They can be colloidal materials such as the excretory matter or the fecal matter. They can be bacteria, cloth and paper fibers, and they can be dissolved materials such as the nitrates, ammonias, phosphates, sodium, calcium. All these comes into the water body through the fertilizers or the chemical fertilizers and the pesticides and the insecticides that we use in the crop field. So all these, even if 0.1% of these waste get into the water, the entire water body will become unfit for drinking. So that is what they said. So why did they give all this value is that so that we'll understand what problem we are causing to nature, so that we can curb that particular problem. So domestic sewage primarily contains, as I told you, they have biodegradable organic matter which readily decomposes due to the action of bacteria and other microorganisms, and can multiply using these organic substances as substrate, and hence utilize some of the components of sewage. So here, these domestic waste, that sewage that is there, domestic sewage means the household sewage that is there. Of course, we discard some biodegradable materials such as the vegetable waste and all that, which will easily decompose. So such waste, if you let it into the rivers, it is not a problem, because the bacteria and all that, very easily it will decompose that particular waste. But never put a non-biodegradable solid waste into a nearby water body. So next, let's talk about the changes in the discharge of sewage into a river. So if we dump sewage waste into a river, how will it affect the quality of the river? Let us look into. So microorganisms are the main boon to nature, because they are the ones that help in decomposition and degradation of biodegradable waste materials that we throw into the environment, right? So microorganisms are the ones that are involved in biodegradation of organic matter that are thrown into the water bodies, and during this biodegradation process, they consume a lot of oxygen. We all have studied about the biological oxygen demand. That is in your second PUC itself, one of the chapter, we had studied how sewage treatment is done. And at the end, if the impure water has become free of sewage and it has become pure, we measure the biological oxygen demand. If the biological oxygen demand is less, then we will understand that water is pure. If it is more, we'll understand that bacteria have died there because of toxic chemicals present in the sewage, and therefore it is more there. And as a result, there is a sharp decline in the dissolved oxygen demands or downstream from the point of sewage discharge. So this causes mortality of fishes and other aquatic creatures. So here they have given a graphical representation in your textbook, wherein they have given the concentration on the y-axis, and on the x-axis it is the direction of flow of water. So here they have shown an arrow mark wherein the sewage is discharged into the water, and as the discharge of sewage increases, or the concentration of the discharge of sewage increases, or the concentration of sewage increases in this particular water body, it will kill the fish, and also it will kill the microorganisms, useful microorganisms that are there in the water body. Why? Because the sewage is nothing but it contains a lot of toxic chemicals, right? So these toxic chemicals in the water will increase. When the toxic chemicals in the water increases, as and when the concentration increases, the concentration of the sewage increases, the intensity of the toxicity level in the water also increases, therefore creating problem or death of the fishes and the microorganisms present there. So when there is death of fishes and microorganisms, there is no organisms there to make use of the oxygen, right? So therefore the oxygen content in that particular water will be more. Therefore we will understand that, okay, the cleaning of the sewage is not taking place, or the water is so polluted that the microbes and the fishes have died, therefore the oxygen level is high and therefore this water is polluted. So that is what we will understand. Next, same thing here. Say for example, now in this particular sewage water, the toxic chemicals have been removed. There is two processes wherein one is manual removal and the other one is sewage treatment is removed by using the microorganisms, right? So all that we have studied in sewage treatment in one of the chapters of second PUC. So here, if these toxic chemicals are removed from the water and then let into the water body, then the microorganisms can make use of the biodegradable materials and they will flourish in number. So when they flourish in number, what happens? The demand for oxygen will increase, or the amount of oxygen in the water will decrease. Why? Because the microorganisms which are aerobic are continuously making use of the oxygen to clean the water. So therefore, measuring the biological oxygen demand, we can understand that. So here you can see the dissolved oxygen has increased. Concentration of dissolved oxygen has increased. But in the treated water, as and when the sewage level decreases, you can see that the treated water, the biological oxygen demand or the concentration of oxygen decreases. Here, only thing is because here the reappearance of clean water organisms, that is the microorganisms, have started to reappear and they are flourishing there. That is how we find the difference between the polluted water with the sewage and that water which is not polluted. So the polluted water will have high oxygen concentration, whereas the non-polluted water will have low oxygen concentration, because the organisms that are thriving there will be making use of the oxygen in order to degrade various biodegradable materials that are there. So this is about the discharge. So that is, if we discharge sewage waste into the water, what will happen? So what did we understand? If we discharge sewage waste into the water, that is, as and when the concentration of the sewage discharge increases, the toxicity level of the water also increases, therefore killing the fishes and the microorganisms that are there or other organisms that are there, and therefore increasing the dissolved oxygen in the water level. And as and when the concentration of the sewage decreases or the toxicity of the sewage is removed and then it is let into the water, then what happens? Flourishing of the microorganisms and the fishes and other water organisms will develop, therefore decreasing the oxygen level, because the fishes and all the microorganisms would have continuously used the oxygen for their particular processes. So that is about this particular graphical representation that they have given in the textbook. So next, let's talk about one more water pollution, that is reason for water pollution, that is called as algal bloom. So the name itself suggests algal bloom means the spread of algae on the surface of water. So presence of large amount of nutrients in the water also causes excessive growth of planktonic, that is free floating algae, and this particular excessive growth of the free floating algae in the water is called as the algal bloom. And this growth actually imparts a distinct color to the water bodies, and not just that, it causes a lot of problems. Why? Because it deteriorates or it completely reduces the quality of water, and therefore resulting in the mortality or the death of the fishes in that particular water. And some bloom forming algae are extremely toxic to human beings and animals as well. So what happens in the case of algal blooms is, say for example, there is an agricultural field near a lake or a river. So into that agricultural field, the farmers would have used a lot of chemical pesticides, insecticides, fertilizers, etc. And these chemical fertilizers are packed with a lot of nutrients. So these nutrients, whenever there is runoff of the water from the agricultural field, along with the soil, these nutrients will enter into the nearby ponds or lakes or rivers or any of the water body. So when the nutrient content in the water body increases, it is a boon, or it is good for the algae, right? The algae will start making of these nutrients and they will start growing so fast that they will cover the entire lake. Now, if the entire lake is covered, from how will the sunlight penetrate into the lake? It will not penetrate, right? So when it doesn't penetrate, then those organisms living there will eventually start to die. So that is nothing but algal bloom. And not just that, this algal bloom, some of the algae, they release some toxic substances. Therefore, the water will become unfit for human as well as animal consumption also. So this is about algal bloom. So next, let's talk about water pollution because of alien species. So alien species means those organisms which have been brought from somewhere and then introduced into a particular country, right? So here, water hyacinth, which is called as Eichhornia crassipes, is one of the best example to explain about water pollution because of alien species. So this water hyacinth is actually an aquatic weed, but it was not a weed earlier. It was used as an ornamental in order to make the ponds look beautiful. You can see, right, how beautiful the lilac color flowers look, right? So in order to beautify the ponds, rivers and streams and all that, especially the ponds and the rivers or the lakes, this Eichhornia species was introduced. But later on, this Eichhornia, they started to grow so vigorously and cover the entire lake, and hence it was considered as a water weed. So it is one of the world's most problematic aquatic weed, and therefore it is also called as the terror of Bengal because it spread so vast and also its growth is in such a high rate or high speed that one round you clean it, and then by the time you think of cleaning it the next time, it would have covered the entire lake. So that is why it is called as terror of Bengal. And these plants, they have a mauve colored flower, beautiful lilac colored flowers, and they were actually introduced to India from some other country because they had very beautiful, lovely flowers. But in India, it started to create a lot of problem because of its faster growth or excessive growth rate, and also it started to cause blockage in the water ways. And they grow faster than our ability to remove them. As I told you, one round you clean it, and by the time you wait for 2 more days to clean it for the second time, again the lake would have got entirely covered by this water hyacinth. So that is how vigorous and fast this particular plant grows. And usually these water hyacinth, they grow abundantly in eutrophic water bodies. Eutrophic water bodies means those water bodies which are rich in nutrients, like how nutrients facilitated algal blooms, right? Just like that, the rich nutrient in the water body, again because of human intervention, also leads to the abundant growth or excessive growth of this particular water hyacinth. And this excessive growth of water hyacinth, it will cause an imbalance in the ecosystem dynamics of the water body. How? Again here, if it covers entire water body, it will become a problem for the penetration of sunlight, and no penetration of sunlight means no growth of plants underwater. No growth of plants underwater means obviously the death of the fishes. So that is how the alien species also can cause water pollution. Next, talking about the components of sewage. What is the sewage waste exactly made up of? So now we learned that the industrial effluents, the sewages, because of algal bloom and because of invasion by alien species, water pollution occurs. So let us see in sewage what is exactly the components that are there in sewage which is causing water pollution. So sewage from our homes or the domestic sewage as well as sewage from hospitals contain some undesirable pathogenic microorganisms. Pathogenic microorganisms means there are microorganisms which are beneficial to and harmful to mankind, right? Beneficial ones will help in the breaking down of the organic content in the sewage and help in reduction of the sewage in the water and all that, biodegradable sewage and all that. But there are some microbes which are harmful. Those harmful microorganisms which cause diseases are called as pathogenic microorganisms. So, those sewage that comes out of houses and from hospitals, they may contain some pathogenic microorganisms, and their entry into or their disposal into water body before or without any proper treatment given to them may cause the outbreak or may lead to a number of serious diseases such as dysentery, typhoid, jaundice, cholera, etc. All these are waterborne diseases, right? So, how do these pathogens enter into the water? It is because of the sewage that is left out by the household and also by the hospitals as well. So, these are the components of sewage. So, components of sewage is they contain the harmful pathogens which may cause a number of diseases. That is one component. Next is, unlike domestic sewage, those sewages or waste waters which are let out by industries, which are called as industrial effluents, like petroleum, paper manufacturing industry, metal extraction industry and processing industry, chemical manufacturing industry, etc. Their effluents contain a lot of toxic substances such as heavy metals. Heavy metals means those metals which are having a weightage of more than 5 gram per centimeter cube, such as heavy metals such as mercury, cadmium, copper, lead, etc. And also they contain a variety of organic compounds. So, what are the sewage components? One of the component of sewage was sewage let out of hospitals and household. They contain pathogenic microorganisms. Sewage left out of industries, they contain heavy metals such as mercury, lead, copper, cadmium, etc. So, these are the different components. So, moving further, let us talk about a term in water pollution which is called as biomagnification. What does biomagnification mean? So, a few toxic substances often present in industrial wastewater can undergo biological magnification in the aquatic food chain. Means as and when they move from the one food chain to the other, their concentration tends to change or increase. Means they are increasing, they are magnifying in their concentration when they move from one trophic level to the other in the food chain. So, trophic level, food chain, all that you have studied in the previous chapter in 2nd PUC, right? So, biomagnification refers to increase in concentration of the toxicant at the successive trophic level. So, the amount of toxic when it is in the water is of so much concentration. Organism that feeds on fish in that particular water, the concentration in the fish will change, and next level, the trophic level the organism feeds, the concentration would have changed. So, likewise at each trophic level, the concentration tends to increase. Means whatever sewage is dumped into that, when it enters into the digestive system of the respective organisms at the different trophic levels, the concentration of this particular toxic chemical or the sewage element, it increases. That is called as biomagnification. Magnification means to increase, to make it larger, right? So, this happens because a toxic substance which gets accumulated by an organism cannot be metabolized or excreted, and therefore it will remain in the body of that particular organism itself, and hence it will be passed on to the organisms that are present at the next higher trophic level. So, this is how. So, when it moves from water to some of the crustaceans that are there in water, the zooplanktons, it will be of some concentration. And these organisms, again, they are not capable of metabolizing and excreting them. So, therefore, maybe say for example, here it was 5 ppm. That is parts per molar concentration of particular chemical entered into the body. Next, when it is eaten by small fishes, it will become 10 ppm. Next, by eaten by large fishes, it might become 15 ppm. Next, eaten by the eagle or any bird of prey, it becomes 20 ppm. Like that, the concentration is magnifying. It is increasing from one trophic level to other. So that is called as biomagnification. So therefore, the pollution of water bodies can lead to biomagnification, which is a threat to the organisms who are dependent on that particular water. So to further understand easily, we shall take the example of DDT. So DDT is actually a chemical that is being banned nowadays, but still illegally it is used as a mosquito repellent to control the spread of mosquito and all that. They use it as a spray. But earlier DDT was used in agricultural field as a insecticide and a pesticide. So we'll take the example of DDT. Now it is banned because of this particular reason itself. Not just that, DDT causes a lot of respiratory disorders, and also it causes biomagnification because of its pollution to the water body. So we'll take this example and you will understand even better. So the concentration of DDT, how did DDT enter into water body? Nearby there was one agricultural field. The farmer would have sprayed DDT to improvise his crops, and whenever there is runoff of water from the agricultural field, it will flow into the nearby ponds and lakes carrying the DDT. That DDT will get accumulated in the ponds and the lakes. Now, in the pond and the lake, the concentration of DDT is increased at successive trophic level. Say, if it starts at 0.003 parts per billion. So they have given here parts per billion in water. It can ultimately reach to 25 parts per million. So here I'll explain it in this diagram. Say for example the water. Here there is an agricultural field. So crops have been grown and the farmer has sprayed DDT to the agricultural field. And now because of heavy rains, what happened? All the water started flowing. It will flow towards the direction of this water body. Now in this water body, what got accumulated? DDT got accumulated. In the water body, along with the accumulation of DDT, there are also other microorganisms that are present, right? There are phytoplanktons, there are zooplanktons, fishes, amphibians, different organisms living there. Now in this DDT, say for example, when the DDT entered into the water body, its concentration was 0.003 parts per billion. Now, this water is consumed by the zooplanktons, right? It is consumed by the zooplanktons, and maybe the phytoplanktons that are there in the water, that is consumed by the zooplanktons. Now, how much amount of DDT entered into the zooplanktons? It is 0.04 parts per million. When it entered into the zooplanktons, it became parts per billion. Biomagnification occurred here, right? Increase in concentration. Next here, these zooplanktons will be eaten by the small fish. Now in the fish, how much is the concentration of DDT? It is 0.5 parts per million. From 0.04, it increased to 0.5. Now these fishes will be, small fishes will be eaten by the large fishes. In the large fishes, how much the concentration got increased? It is 2 parts per million. From 0.5, it increased to 2 parts per million of DDT. Parts per million of DDT concentration in the fishes. Now from the fishes, that fishes will be eaten by the birds. Say for example, the hawk or the eagle or whatever. So the fish eating birds, in them it will be 25 parts per million. Can you see how much jump in the concentration of DDT? This is nothing but biomagnification. Every level of the every trophic level of the food chain, the concentration of the chemical, that is DDT, increased. It got magnified. This particular process called as biomagnification. So therefore, water pollution with a toxic chemical can lead to biomagnification, which is one of the hazardous process in the environment, leading to the death of a lot of organisms. So this is about biomagnification, wherein we took the example of DDT chemical. So moving further, let us study about eutrophication. So eutrophication, it is also one of the causes. It is caused because of water pollution itself. So biomagnification is caused because of water pollution. Eutrophication is also caused because of water pollution. What is eutrophication? Let us look into. So it is the natural aging of the lake by nutrient enrichment of its water. So what is eutrophication? Natural aging. Natural aging means, so the death of the lake will occur. So how it will occur, I'll tell you. Say for example, natural aging of a plant. First, the plant will be very tiny seedling. It will grow into two-leaf stage. Then it will grow into a bigger plant wherein it will make use of all the nutrients. And after a certain period of time, it will start yellowing. The leaves will start to fall off. And finally, the senescence of the plant or the death of the plant will occur. That is natural aging of the plant, right? Just like that, here also waters also age. The water bodies also age. How water bodies age? It is nothing but the water body, the deposition of sediments and all that in the water body will start to increase, and therefore that lake will get converted. So that is nothing but aging of the lake. So it is a natural aging of a lake because of the enrichment of the nutrients in the water. How will the nutrient enrichment get in the water? One reason is because of the agricultural chemicals and all that are entering into the water body because of that particular reason. So with times, streams draining into the lake, they introduce nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen and phosphorus are two of the important chemicals that are used in agriculture, and these nitrogen and phosphorus, they are very much needed for the growth of the plants, right? And also for the aquatic organisms, especially the plants. Therefore, the nitrogen and phosphorus nutrient enrichment in the lakes, they will increase the growth of the aquatic organisms. And as the lake's fertility increases further, plant and animal life, burgeons, and organic remains begin to be deposited on the lake. Now, the lake is filled with plants and animals. These plants and animals will die and decay. When they die and decay, they will add on to the sediment of the lake, right? So now the lake it is getting filled with sediments. Why it is getting filled with sediment? And of course, it will get filled with sediments, but it will take several thousands of years. But in the case of eutrophication, which is occurring because of water pollution, it will take place within few years itself. Why? Because of the nutrients such as the nitrogen, phosphorus and all that entering into the lakes, and therefore it will promote the excessive growth of plants and animals. When these plants and animals die, they add on to the sediment of the lake, and therefore it will result in the eutrophication. How? We shall see. So over the centuries, as silt and organic debris, so when these plants and animals that are there, they die and decay, it will add on to the silt and the debris of the lake. So the lake will start to grow shallower and warmer. The lake which was deep, because of the addition, now what will happen? Soil will get added here. That is in the form of sediments. That sediment is nothing but containing silt and organic debris because of the death of the plants and the animals, or the aquatic plants and the animals. So the lake will start to become shallower, and it will also start to become warmer because the penetration of sunlight is also increasing, because the lake is becoming lesser and lesser deep, or it is becoming shallower. So with warm water organisms supplanting those that thrive in a cold environment. So marsh plant, next what will happen? Because of sediment, settling of the sediments, what happen next? Marsh plants will start to take root, or it will start to grow in these shallow waters, and they will start to fill the original lake basin. Now, in that sediment area, marshy plants will start to grow there. And eventually, the lake will give way to large masses of floating plants, which is called as bog, finally converting into land. You have seen marshes, right? How it is neither a proper land nor a water body. Like that, with trees, it will have trees and all that. So like that, it will get converted into, because of eutrophication. So this particular process called as eutrophication, wherein the lake eventually ages. It will start getting converted into a land. That is because of the pollution of the water by nitrates, phosphorus, etc. So that is eutrophication. So next, let's study about the cultural or accelerated eutrophication. So what is this cultural or accelerated eutrophication? So depending on climate, depending on the size of the lake and other factors, the natural aging of the lake usually takes thousands of years. However, because of the pollutants or because of human intervention or pollutants from man's activities like the industrial effluents from the effluents from the industries and sewage from the hose can radically accelerate the aging process. As I told you, it will take thousands of years for the lake to age naturally. So that we have seen in ecosystem chapter of biology, wherein it is nothing but called as ecological succession, how it will occur. So naturally, for ecological succession to occur or eutrophication to take place, or for the aging, or not eutrophication, for the aging of the lake to take place, it will take thousands of years. But because of the release of industrial effluents, sewage waste, agricultural waste and all that, the nitrogen and phosphorus content will get filled, and very soon, within hundreds of years or 50 years itself, the lake will start to age very, very fast, or age of the lake will start to accelerate, it will start to increase. So this phenomenon has been called cultural or accelerated eutrophication. One is natural eutrophication, which will take thousands of years because of nature's itself, because of soil erosion and all that into the lake and all that, it will take place. One more thing is cultural or accelerated. This is mainly because of human beings polluting the water body. So this is nothing but cultural or accelerated eutrophication. So the prime contaminants in the case of eutrophication are nitrates and phosphates. We have already learnt about it, right? And these are one of the best plant nutrients. So the plant number will increase. If the plant number increases, the animal number will also increase. When these both die, they will add on to the silt and the sediment deposition in the lake, therefore leading to eutrophication. So these components of eutrophication, that is nitrates and phosphates, they excessively stimulate or they overstimulate the growth of algae, causing unsightly scum and unpleasant odors in the lakes. In Bangalore and all, you might, when you go near a lake, you can find that dirty smell, right? Why is that dirty smell of the lakes in the cities? It is because of the dumping of the industrial effluents and all that, which contains high amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus, and these nitrogen and phosphorus will increase the algal bloom, and that algal bloom will obviously give a unpleasant odor or smell to that particular lake. Therefore, it will decrease the dissolved oxygen content in the lake, and when the dissolved oxygen content in the lake decreases, the aquatic organisms will start to die in the lake. At the same time, other pollutants flowing into the lake, they may also be poisonous or toxic, and hence they will poison the whole population of fish, and these fish, when they decompose, they further deplete the water's dissolved oxygen content, and in such a fashion a lake can literally choke to death. So therefore, eutrophication at the end of the day can choke the lake to a death, and eutrophication is a result of water pollution itself. Biomagnification is also because of water pollution, and eutrophication is also because of water pollution. So this is about eutrophication. So here, apart from that, so first we studied about different components of eutrophication, right? We studied how phosphorus and nitrates leads to eutrophication, and we shall also study how the heated wastewaters or the thermal wastewaters flowing out of electricity generating units, for example, such as the thermal power plants, they also contain some of the important toxic pollutants, and these thermal wastewater, they eliminate or they reduce the number of organisms sensitive to high temperature, and also in other terms, they may increase the or enhance the growth of plants and fishes that in extremely cold areas, but only after causing damage to the indigenous flora and fauna. So say for example, in that water will have a low temperature, and that low temperature will facilitate the growth of a particular plant and animal species that is capable of surviving in the cold temperature only. Now, because of eutrophication, because of the waste let out by the thermal power plants, these waste will increase the temperature of the lakes, or it will make the lakes warmer. So when the lakes become warmer, no longer the cold thriving plants and animals can survive there, which will lead to their complete washout or death. So that is also one of the main problems that eutrophication causes. So let's take the example eutrophication. Let us take the case study of integrated wastewater treatment in one of the country that it was followed. We shall take that particular example. So here you'll understand even better. So wastewater, including sewage, can be treated in an integrated manner by using a mix of both artificial treatment method and natural processes as well. So an example where artificial and cultural practices or natural practices or scientific as well as cultural practices were followed in order to treat the sewage waste water that initiative was undertaken by a town of Arcata, which is situated along the northern coast of California. So in northern coast of California, there is a small town called as Arcata. So these people were also facing a lot of problem because of the dumping of sewage waste into the water. So they were the first people who took an initiative wherein they incorporated both scientific and cultural methods in order to reduce the sewage in the water body. So what they did, we shall look into. So these people, that is the people of the town of Arcata, they made a group and they collaborated with biologists from the Humboldt State University, and they took an initiative, or they made an integrated wastewater treatment process within the natural system itself. So there itself, what they did was, they didn't take the water somewhere and then treat the water, make it free of sewage and then re-release it, and all that they didn't do. But where the water body is there itself, applying scientific and natural methods, they try to curb the sewage pollution. So what they did, we shall look into. So they actually went in for two steps of cleaning process, or two stages of cleaning process, wherein first stage was they went in for the conventional sedimentation. So when all the waste materials will get collected, they went in for filtering and chlorine treatments were given. So first they went in for conventional sedimentation for all the waste material to get settled properly. Then they went in for filtering, and then they went in for chlorine treatment. After this stage, lots of dangerous pollutants or toxic chemicals like the dissolved heavy metals that are there, mercury, cadmium, all these, they could not be removed. They will still be there in the water itself. So to combat this, another step was followed. So first step was to remove the undissolved waste that were there. So how to remove the undissolved waste? That is by conventional sedimentation, filtering, and then by chlorine treatment. But what about the dissolved metals that are there, heavy metals? It was difficult to remove. So that is when they went in for the next step. So in the next step, what they did was, the biologists from Humboldt University, they helped them. What they did was, they developed a series of 6 connected marshes over 60 hectares of marshlands. So if you can see here, this is the town of Arcata, wherein they have quite a number of water bodies which were converted into marshes. Why it got converted into marshes? Because of eutrophication, right? How eutrophication converts the lake or ages the lake, we have seen in the previous slide. So what they did was, they divided these marshes, that is 60 hectares of marsh was there, 60 hectares, they divided these marshes into 6 marshes and interconnected these marshes. Next, what they did was, they introduced appropriate plants, algae, fungi and bacteria into that particular marshes. Now these fungi, plants and bacteria, what they will do? They will neutralize. They neutralized, they absorbed and assimilated the pollutants. That is, they neutralized, they absorbed, and they completely removed the heavy metals or the dissolved nutrients that are there from the pollutants or from the marshes. Hence, as the water flows through the marshes, it gets purified naturally. So the marshes also, now at present, the marsh also has a sanctuary with a high level of biodiversity in the form of fishes. They contain animals, birds that now reside there because of the cleanliness of the water. So how beautifully they have done, right? So to prevent, what they did was they connected all the river to these marshes. So in these marshes, they introduced the bacteria, some plants, some useful fungi, algae and all that, which automatically dissolved and removed the heavy metals, and that made that water body free. Now, in those marshes, because it was clean, a lot of different wildlife started to develop there. A biodiversity itself got created. So, this was how they went in for waste management. So, the town people first they did was sedimentation, filtering, chlorine treatment, everything they did. By taking the help of Humboldt University, biologist of Humboldt University, they went in for a method wherein in that particular region itself, they introduced the good bacteria, microbes and all those plants, all that in order to clean that water completely or purify it completely. So this particular initiative was actually taken by a group of people in the town of Arcata, and they called themselves as Friends of Arcata Marsh, that is FOAM. They made a group called as FOAM, and even today they are the ones who are responsible for upkeeping and safeguarding of this wonderful project, wherein 2 steps are still being followed in order to very neatly minimize the effects caused by the sewage on the water body. So this is how they went in for the scientific and cultural methods of sewage treatment by taking the help of biologists from Humboldt University. So all the credit today goes to this particular group called as the Friends of the Arcata Marsh Foam. Next, let's talk about one more method that can be followed in order to prevent pollution of the water bodies, which is called as ecological sanitation. So, ecological sanitation. Sanitation has something to do with the excretory waste or the fecal waste, right? How the even fecal waste and all that in villages, people, they go to the rivers wherein they dispose the fecal waste and all that. And also the fecal waste from drains, they flow and there are chances of them entering into the rivers and ponds and on nearby water bodies. So how can we prevent that? So for that, ecological sanitation is a more sustainable system to very neatly handle the human excreta using dry composting toilets. So this is one of the best practical, hygienic, efficient and cost-effective solution to dispose the human excreta very, very efficiently. So with this composting method, human excreta can be recycled. What they do here is, they don't use water. It is called as dry waste. So that dry human excreta is recycled into a natural fertilizer, and therefore it is used in fields for growing crops and all that, instead of using a chemical fertilizer, because excreta also contains urea related compounds, right? So that is why. So there are working eco-sand toilets that have been built up in many areas of Kerala and Sri Lanka. So here there is one of the eco-sand toilets that you can see, wherein water is not involved. Therefore, all the excretory waste are collected, it is recycled and it is converted into fertilizers that can be used for growing various crops and plants and all that. So this is about ecological sanitation that can be followed to control water pollution. So water pollution can be controlled by treatment of the sewage, and also it can be controlled by eco-sanitation, all that. So this was about the water pollution and its control and how to manage the sewage water. So I hope you understood this session well. In the coming session, let us discuss about solid waste. What are the different solid waste, and also how to control these solid waste, and also we shall study about the agrochemical waste and their effects on the how they result in water pollution. All that we shall study in detail. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.